Rachel Zegler just keeps making things worse with the Walt Disney Company. The more that she tries to defend this movie, the more that she tries to spew her agenda onto the general public, it's only making matters worse. Not just for Bob Iger, but for whatever is left of the image of Disney as a whole.
Jonah Platt, whose father helped produce the latest Snow White film, had some very harsh words for star Rachel Zegler.
For context, Variety wrote a report recently titled "Inside Disney's Snow White Fiasco: Death Threats, Beefed Up Security, and a Social Media Guru for Rachel Zegler." EV Magazine wrote on X, "When you compare how Rachel Zegler spoke about Snow White to how other actresses who played live-action Disney princesses spoke about their character, really underlines just how poorly she carried herself."
A developing drama involving the problematic live-action Snow White from Disney. The result of the remake is now a high-stakes court case involving Rachel Zegler. Apparently went to an urgent meeting with the studio's attorneys as per several internal conflicts between the Walt Disney Company and the actress have intensified to the point when the star was called immediately to discuss possible breaches of the contract, harm to one's reputation, and the potential of impending litigation.
I am in the thick of rehearsals for Romeo plus Juliet, so I'm going to get out of here. Bye for now. The Variety story notes how a couple of minutes after posting this, she replied to her own tweet and wrote, "And always remember, free Palestine."
This most recent, a variation gives a project a fresh perspective, already tarnished by societal problems at the box office, criticism from the media, and behind the scenes disagreements for months, with rumors circulating regarding who is ultimately accountable for the terrible response of the movie, while cast members, studio execs, and even vocal supporters have noted out fingers in different directions.
Variety breaks down how after this tweet went viral, the studio was shocked that she would mix a promo tweet with a political statement. As a result, Mark Platt flew to New York to speak with her in person.
Now, Zegler is placed in an emergency meeting. At the heart of the dispute that is being raised, important queries regarding how this once initially promising, the idea turned into a disaster. It also draws attention to the larger implications and highlights important aspects that are in line with how this problem affects the audience and stakeholders, similarly demonstrating the brittleness of star power and brand loyalty under severe public scrutiny.
Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged. Zegler isn't the only one who has made political statements, though. Her co-star Gal Gadot, who plays the Evil Queen, expressed her staunch support for Israel.
This unexpected legal development arrives following previous reports that Disney was considering its alternatives for recovering losses resulting from the movie's poor box office receipts and broke critical standing. Initially, the story coming from Disney's perspective suggested that top performers such as co-star Gal Gadot and Rachel Zegler might having violated specific promotional duties or denigrated the original masterpiece from 1937 in ways that undermine the brand.
Snow White's budget was around $240 to $270 million. It has made $43 million domestically so far and around $84 million globally.
Nevertheless, recent assertions from Zegler's side claimed internal sabotage as well as corporate politicking could have been involved, a larger part in the undertakings. More disastrous than the public opinion of any one actor. Comments on the actress's status as called into an unexpected in-person conversation with the legal staff at Disney implies that tensions have reached a boiling point, potentially pressuring the studio to embrace a more assertive legal stance if negotiations are unsuccessful.
The film received backlash for various reasons in the lead up to its release. Zegler had called the original Snow White movie dated and weird and said Prince Charming was a stalker.
It also draws attention to the larger implications and highlights important aspects that are in line with how this problem affects the audience and stakeholders, similar to indicating a possible watershed Hollywood moment where studios and their best players struggle for dominance of the story in the midst of enormous financial Disney's commercial stakes and risks to one's reputation could hardly be greater.
Evie Magazine wrote on X, when you compare how Rachel Zegler spoke about Snow White to how other actresses who played live-action Disney princesses spoke about their character, really underlines just how poorly she carried herself.
The Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the original, is considered a landmark in the film industry. History is commonly credited with establishing the supremacy of Walt Disney in animated movies and studio openings. Aspirations from the golden age for this contemporary. Naturally, the remakes were extravagant and high-end. Production costs, a cast that includes household names.
I'll quickly mention this. The son of Snow White producer Mark Platt, Jonah Platt is the son's name. He is speaking out publicly against Rachel Zegler and blaming her for the film's catastrophic failure at the box office.
And a plot that is allegedly modified to reflect modern sensibilities. However, the movie's premiere was a scathing reality check as detractors denounced it. Deviations from the cherished source. Because while many longtime Disney fans charged the studio with abandoning the traditional soul in favor of fashionable message along the hallways of, panic broke out at Disney headquarters when it became clear that the movie would not simply perform below expectations.
I mean, he's totally right. Now, of course, as we covered, the movie is terrible anyway in its own right. It was probably going to underperform regardless. People are tired of the soulless cash grab remake thing.
It could intentionally harm the Snow's prestige by calling an emergency meeting white brand. Meeting with Disney's Rachel Zegler seems to be trying both a final effort to salvage its reputation and getting ready for the potential internal disputes could degenerate into full-scale legal disputes. This scenario also draws attention to the larger implications and highlights important aspects that are in line with how this problem affects the parties involved.
The movie has all kinds of problems that could be pinned partly on the producer. Like the producer did not do a good job. Nobody who produced this movie did a good job.
And viewers alike, highlighting the difficult equilibrium between contemporary retellings of classic stories and the potent element of nostalgia that insiders who drive the company's fortunes. Understanding Zegler's legal, the actress has come, according to the meeting, accompanied by the messaging of her own counsel that she had fully expected. A heated session is said to be the main focus of Disney's worries about how she online posts and interviews that showed some treasured features of the original masterpiece from 1937.
Apart from all of the political controversy started by the actress, so the movie had all kinds of problems creatively and conceptually.
Some viewers believe that the studio is collecting data to support the assertion that Zegler's statements referring to the prince, analyzing or categorizing aspects of earlier stories, out of date broke a requirement cast members must adhere to and preserve Disney's heritage, but representatives of Zegler have retorted these charges by contending that Disney itself told the actors to highlight the progressive angle of the movie.
There's no doubt that she drove the final nail into this movie's coffin. She probably drove the final 2 or 3 nails into the coffin.
Enhancing the idea that what appeared to be forward-thinking at one point, now criticism could be turned into a violation of contract if the studio wants. This draws attention to the wider ramifications and highlights important ideas that are relatable with the effects this problem has on stakeholders, as well as the viewers, including the idea that sometimes creative mandates put entertainers in danger when a endeavor fails and Rachel Zegler maneuvers through a legal minefield.
And a lot of what you see with Zegler is really just this pretty common Gen Z mentality and approach to work.
Inquiries continue to discuss Gal Gadot, who has encountered receiving criticism of her own for allegedly avoiding direct inquiries regarding the controversy around the movie, even though Dow has not summoned to a public event. Not yet, at least not in an emergency meeting. Industry observers question whether similar discussions are taking place behind, according to the rumor mill, behind closed doors. Gatto's contract may contain provisions pertaining to media cooperation and brand defense.
She believes that she should be able to express herself and speak her truth or whatever nonsense, regardless of the consequences to everybody else.
Leaving the door available for Disney attorneys to seek her as. However, for the time being, Zegler seems to serve as the main emphasis of Disney's legal examination. This dynamic highlights a essential Hollywood realism yet. A-list celebrities frequently have substantial leverage. Studios can still affect them. Attempts to uphold agreements when a project fails due to the strain of negative publicity. It also draws attention to the larger implications and highlights important aspects that are in line with how this problem affects the audience and stakeholders. Similar.
In reality, you have a job. You're getting paid to do this job. You signed on the dotted line. You took on the role. You took the job. And that job comes with certain basic responsibilities.
Like the conflict between well-known talent. They believe they behaved honorably, and studios looking for responsibility for in-depth losses of money. Long before this, legal concerns were raised about the conference within Disney's test audiences. In executive suites reported that the updated tone of the movie undermined the fanciful core character of the novel. Arcs had been completely redesigned, is a major point of contention, included removing or drastically redesigning Among the Dwarfs.
And one of the most basic is the responsibility to control yourself and comport yourself a certain way publicly so that you don't harm the project and thereby harm all the hundreds of other people who are working on it.
Those private cautions predicted a difficult journey ahead, but few anticipated the magnitude of the ensuing reaction after the first trailers. Social media talk that was dropped turned hostile, with a large number of admirers asserting the new all the things that made Snow White. First of all, an enduring story. Some disapproved of the movie's focus on social remarks, while others bemoaned the loss of the old-fashioned fun, magic. As well as during these discussions, the media sound bites of Rachel Zegler apparently making fun of the first movie's romance turned become a source of ire.
Because she's not stupid. Well, she might be stupid, but she's not so dumb that she didn't realize that by, for example, coming out and saying that all Trump supporters deserve to suffer.
Intensifying the online uproar. This emphasizes the wider implications and highlights important aspects that are in line with how this problem affects the audience and stakeholders. Similarly, highlighting how short-lived viral moments can eclipse months of tens of millions and careful planning. Zegler's contribution to the production costs has started to rebel against the story that depicts her as the head. The film's downfall architect leaked. According to communication, the studio officials specifically instructed the actors members to showcase the updated Snow White as a contemporary icon of empowerment.
What's her friend screaming?
Wow.
And this, by the way, nobody was in there.
Can you go to the yeah, that's very so this is Bob Iger.
Even going so far as to provide talking points with stark contrasts, utilizing the 1937 classics method to romanticism and gender norms as stated by Zegler feels unfairly treated by these discoveries, singled out for remarks she thought were completely in line with the advertising plan proposed by Disney's teams involved in promotions. If that's the case, Disney's decision to partially hold her being responsible now seems phony, yet, according to the emergency meeting, if there is no possibility of reconciliation.
Disney's Bob Iger says their mission is to entertain, not send messaging as Snow White sales compete for worst performing live-action Disney adaptation ever.
The studio might get more. Its efforts to recover money or reputational harm, which emphasizes the wider ramifications and highlights important ideas that are consistent with how this problem affects the audience and stakeholders. Similarly, emphasizing the fragile, the dilemma performers encounter when a movie's suddenly A creative vision conflicts with the studio's intention to safeguard its reputation. Rumors continue to circulate following the release that assigning culpability goes far beyond. According to several insiders, the cast, Disney's executives were separated from first on the extent to which the story of Snow White.
Infusing messaging is not what we're up to, Iger said. We need to be entertained.
Cherished entertainment conglomerate might develop into involved in a controversy if thought to be giving up its essential principles throughout a period of. The situation that is causing the commotion is widespread. Internal messages that were leaked depict chaos in a sobering manner. Among Disney's levels, a few emails provide executives' worries about the movie's guidance months prior to its publication, implying that the disputes presently public eruptions were anticipated, but others who were unclothed disclosed the sudden change course by the marketing group when online hostility increased, including directives to minimize Zegler's. Despite this, promotional reel interviews, the voice and face of the celebrity were already connected to remarks regarding updating old cliches that give her an easy target once the unfavorable rumors took over. Should those emails be relevant during any formal proceedings that might have sparked, according to insiders, the emergency meeting, they could explain how severely Disney changed tactics and if, in fact, Zegler's claims were supported at greater levels prior to receiving a label harmful after failure. This also draws attention to the wider ramifications and highlights important elements that are relatable to how stakeholders are affected by this issue and the audience, as well as recommending the possibility of a convoluted paper trail. This demonstrates how strategic critics of PR meltdowns and poor calculations claim that no one offender can completely describe how the movie reverses the overhaul of important Snow White themes, the difficult aim of satisfying both progressive crowds and devoted followers worldwide, overflowing with remakes and the star-driven advertising campaign, merged to produce the ideal storm of Rachel Zegler's dissatisfied personal brand. Praised earlier for her breakthrough, West Side Story's role was intended to infuse an elderly person with fresh life. Satirical fairy tale, but the same. Younger candor might have increased disputes if the actress was in fact repeating pivotal talking points, departing from custom presently within. There is an emergency meeting scheduled. The query is if Zegler and Disney's attorneys are able to reach a mutually beneficial route ahead or whether each side will delve in, running the danger of a lengthy standoff that further damages the reputation of the movie, further draws attention to the wider ramifications, and highlights important ideas that are relatable